The sky was fire. The air reeked of scorched metal, burnt flesh, and the acrid scent of betrayal. General Elias Varkos stood atop a ridge of blackened rock, his battered armor streaked with blood. Some of it his own, most of it alien. Around him, what remained of the 22nd Hellborn Legion fought like demons, their weapons burning red-hot as they cut down the Seltheri forces that had once called them allies. This world, Cas-92, had been their battleground for 6 months. The Seltheri Dominion had hired them, promising wealth and technology in exchange for their service against the Iraq hegemony. The Hellborn had delivered, carving a path of devastation through the enemy's ranks, earning victories against impossible odds. And yet, when the final battle was won, the Seltheri turned on them. They didn't even try to justify it, growled Captain Ran, spitting blood onto the cracked ground. His shoulder was a mess of charred flesh where a plasma bolt had nearly taken his arm. Just left us here to die. Varkos clenched his fists. He had suspected treachery. He had seen it before. Humanity was nothing more than disposable muscle to the aristocracies of the galaxy, mercenaries to be discarded when their usefulness ran out. The Seltheri had declared them expendable, and now an orbital bombardment was coming to wipe them from existence. But Varkos had no intention of dying as someone else's pawn. "Rally the survivors," he ordered, his voice like iron. "We're taking that Seltheri dreadnought." Rand's eyes widened. "Where what?" Varkos pointed across the battlefield, where the Seltheri command ship hovered just beyond the city ruins, its landing ramps still extended. The alien officers hadn't expected resistance. After all, their human allies were supposed to be dead. That arrogance would be their undoing. The Hellborn moved like wraiths through the wreckage of the battlefield. Scattered Seltheri patrols fell before they even realized they were under attack. The Legion's soldiers fought like men who had nothing left to lose. Because they didn't. They were abandoned, forgotten. But Varkos would make sure the galaxy never forgot them again. By the time the Seltheri officers realized what was happening, it was too late. The Hellborn stormed up the ramps, their stolen weapons carving a bloody path through the command ship. Varkos himself led the charge to the bridge, his rifle empty, his combat blade dripping with the ichor of slain enemies. The Seltheri captain shrieked in his own language, scrambling to activate the ship's self-destruct. Varkos' blade silenced him before he could press the button. Moments later, the dreadnought's engines roared to life. The Hellborn had won their escape, but Varkos had set his sights on something greater. This was no longer about survival. It was about vengeance. It was about power. The Warborn dynasty would rise, and it would start with fire. The stolen Seltheri dreadnought, Judgment's blade, tore through the void at full burn, streaking toward Sol. Behind it, a fleet of smaller Seltheri pursuit craft gave chase, their weapons carving white-hot trails through space. The Hellborn Legion fought back with stolen artillery, manning the dreadnought's defenses with ruthless efficiency. Each kill only fueled their resolve. This was their first battle as free men, not mercenaries. Varkos stood on the bridge, arms crossed, watching the holographic display with cold focus. The ship was barely holding together. They had taken Cas-92's atmosphere, suffered through void combat. And now, on the final stretch home, the Seltheri were determined to erase them. "Jump calculations ready," said Lieutenant Corval, the ship's makeshift navigator. A former weapons officer, he had learned FTL navigation in a matter of days, or at least enough to keep them from disintegrating mid-jump. Varkos nodded. "Execute." The stars stretched, twisted, and in a violent shudder, the ship vanished into the void. Luna Shipyards, Sol System. The Judgment's blade reappeared on the edge of Earth's domain, its hull scorched and leaking plasma. Warning sirens blared across the system as automated defenses locked onto the alien vessel. Seconds later, dozens of warships belonging to the United Earth Authority scrambled to intercept. A transmission cut through the chaos. "This is General Elias Varkos of the 22nd Hellborn Legion. Stand down." The command sent shockwaves through the fleet. Varkos had been declared KIA. The 22nd was presumed lost. And yet here he was, broadcasting from the bridge of a Selthari dreadnought. "Sir," Corval muttered, eyes scanning incoming fleet data. "They're hesitating. They don't know whether to welcome us or open fire." "Good," Varkos said. "Let them hesitate." Minutes later, a response came from the UEA High Command. Not a welcome, not an offer of assistance, only a cold demand. "You are ordered to surrender your vessel and report to the UEA tribunal for questioning." Varkos scoffed. Of course, the bureaucrats who had sent his men to die didn't see heroes returning. They saw a threat. He opened a private channel to his officers. "We did not claw our way out of hell to bow to the same men who sold us," he said. "The UEA is weak, ruled by cowards who let aliens dictate our fate. This is our moment. We take Luna, we take Earth, and we take what is ours." The decision was made. Moments later, the Judgment's blade powered its weapons. The Hellborn struck first, launching a devastating surprise attack against Luna's defenses. The orbital station fell in hours. Earth's leaders scrambled to respond, but it was already too late. The Warborn had come home, and they were here to rule. The fall of Luna sent shockwaves through the Sol system. The United Earth Authority, bloated with corruption and paralyzed by bureaucracy, reeled in disbelief. General Elias Varkos, the war hero they had abandoned, had returned, not as a soldier, but as a conqueror. On Earth, corporate warlords and planetary governors convened in panic. The Hellborn Legion had seized Luna in a matter of hours. Its orbital defenses turned against the very government that had once controlled them. The message was clear. The Warborn did not negotiate. Varkos stood at the command dais aboard the Judgment's blade, eyes fixed on the holomap of Earth. "They will send forces soon," he said. "They will hesitate first, try to talk. But the moment we give them an opening, they will strike." Ran, his bloodied and battle-worn second-in-command, smirked. "Let them. We'll teach them what it means to be Warborn." The UEA's response was slow but inevitable. Within days, a fleet of Earth's finest warships arrived, positioning themselves in high orbit. Their commander, Admiral Leto Karthus, patched through a transmission, his face lined with frustration. "Elias Varkos, you are ordered to stand down and surrender. Whatever grudge you hold, it ends now." Varkos stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "We were abandoned, Karthus, left to die so the UEA could maintain its comfortable little status quo. I will not surrender. The UEA is weak, and weak rulers do not deserve to govern humanity." Karthus exhaled sharply. "You've made your choice." The transmission cut out. Seconds later, the first shots were fired. The battle for Luna erupted. Warships clashed in brutal, close-quarters combat, the Hellborn using stolen Selthari technology to cripple their opponents. On the surface, Hellborn shock troops stormed UEA military installations, overwhelming defenders who had never faced warriors of their caliber. Despite superior numbers, the UEA's forces faltered. They were fighting for a paycheck. The Warborn were fighting for something greater: vengeance, justice, destiny. Within 3 days, it was over. The UEA fleet was shattered. Admiral Karthus forced to retreat with what little remained of his forces. Luna was fully secured, its shipyards now fueling Varkos' war machine. But Varkos knew this was only the beginning. He activated the Warborn's next phase. A single, undeniable transmission was sent to every human soldier, mercenary, and fleet still fighting under alien banners. "You have been lied to, sold as tools, discarded as waste. No more. You have a choice. Join the Warborn and reclaim your place as masters of the stars, or remain slaves to alien masters. Choose wisely. There will be no second chance." Across the galaxy, humanity's scattered warriors heard the call. Some embraced it, others prepared to resist. The lines had been drawn. Varkos turned to his commanders. "We're not stopping here," he said. We're bringing every last human soldier home, whether they like it or not. The Warborn dynasty was no longer just an idea. It was a reality forged in blood and conquest. Luma had fallen. The UEA had been humiliated. And now, Varkos turned his eyes to the rest of humanity. Millions of warriors still scattered across the galaxy, fighting and dying for alien masters who saw them as expendable. The call to arms had gone out. Across the void, mercenary legions, planetary militias, and human warbands received the Warborn message. Many flocked to Varkos' banner, eager to serve under a leader who fought for humanity rather than corporate greed or alien coin. But not all saw him as a savior. Some human warlords, entrenched in their positions of power, refused to bow. Others, still loyal to their alien employers, prepared to resist. The strongest among them was General Arden Kest, a UEA war hero who commanded the Black Templars, an elite human mercenary force in service to the Seltheri Dominion. Kest had grown rich and powerful under the old system, and he had no intention of surrendering that power. From his fortress on Esmar 4, a heavily industrialized planet deep in Seltheri space, Kest sent his response. "You are no king, Varkos. You are a rabid dog who got lucky. Stand down, or I will put you down." Varkos only smiled at the threat. "You were given a choice, Kest. Now you'll be given an example." The Warborn fleet launched its largest campaign yet. The invasion of Esmar 4 was brutal. Kest's forces were disciplined, well-equipped, and fortified within a planetary stronghold designed to withstand full-scale sieges. But Varkos had not come to fight a conventional war. He had come to burn. Using stolen Seltheri warships, the Warborn bypassed Esmar 4's primary defense grid, striking deep into the industrial zones with pinpoint orbital bombardments. They targeted supply lines, fuel depots, and ammunition factories, cutting off Kest's ability to sustain his defenses. When his forces were weakened, Varkos led the ground assault personally, his soldiers hitting like an unstoppable storm. Kest fought fiercely, refusing to retreat, refusing to bend. The Black Templars made the Warborn pay for every inch of ground, but the Hellborn Legion had survived worse. They had been betrayed before. They had fought without backup, without hope. They knew how to endure, how to grind down an enemy who thought himself unbreakable. The final battle took place at Fortress Ardent, Kest's last bastion. As the Warborn breached its gates, Varkos and Kest came face to face on the burning ramparts. "You fight for nothing." Kest spat, raising his blade. "Your so-called dynasty is just another empire that will fall like the rest." Varkos lunged. Their duel was brutal. Two warriors forged in war, each unwilling to yield. But Varkos was stronger, faster. He shattered Kest's guard, driving his blade through the general's chest. As Kest gasped his final breath, Varkos whispered, "Then let's make sure this one lasts." With Kest dead, the Black Templars surrendered. Esmar 4 belonged to the Warborn, and the galaxy had just learned a terrifying truth. Resistance was futile. The dynasty was inevitable. The fall of Esmar 4 sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The Warborn dynasty had done the unthinkable. Not only had they crushed one of humanity's strongest warlords, but they had torn a key industrial world from the Seltheri Dominion. For the first time in history, aliens feared humanity. And that was something the galaxy could not allow. The Scirak hegemony, longtime rivals of the Seltheri, saw an opportunity to claim power. But instead of fighting the Warborn, they extended a rare offer, an alliance. If Varkos swore fealty, that Scirak would recognize his rule, supply his armies, and grant him dominion over human-occupied worlds. Varkos' response was simple. The Warborn bowed to no one. The Scirak were insulted, but the Seltheri were enraged. They could tolerate humans as mercenaries, as disposable shock troops, but a human empire. Unacceptable. The Dominion declared total war on the Warborn dynasty, rallying every available fleet to annihilate them. The Seltheri Execution Armada was assembled. 300 warships, the largest force ever gathered against humanity. Their objective was clear: wipe out the Warborn before their rule could solidify. Varkos saw the storm coming. He knew Earth could not withstand a siege, nor could the Warborn fleet outmatch the Execution Armada in open battle. But Varkos had never fought like a traditional ruler. He did not wait for the enemy to strike first. He took the war to them. Using stolen Seltheri encryption codes, the Warborn intercepted enemy fleet movements, predicting the Armada's path before it could reach Sol. Rather than engaging head-on, they launched a series of brutal hit-and-run strikes. At Neptune's graveyard, Warborn ambush fleets emerged from the ice fields, tearing apart a Seltheri vanguard before vanishing into deep space. At Outpost Tetra, Warborn commandos infiltrated the enemy's supply stations, sabotaging entire dreadnoughts before they could launch. At the Kuiper line, the Seltheri believed they had finally cornered the Warborn fleet, only to realize too late that they had been led into a trap. As the Seltheri ships advanced, a hidden Warborn flotilla decloaked from the shadows of dead moons. Varkos himself led the assault, his fleet striking the Armada's flagship formations. The battle was a slaughter. By the end of the campaign, nearly half the Seltheri Execution Armada had been annihilated. The survivors, battered and demoralized, were forced into retreat. For the first time in galactic history, an alien empire had been beaten back by humans, not as mercenaries, but as conquerors. As Varkos stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the broken remnants of the Armada scatter, he turned to his officers. "They tried to erase us. Now we erase them." There would be no peace, no negotiations. The Warborn dynasty was done fighting for survival. Now, it was humanity's turn to go on the offensive. The Seltheri Execution Armada had been shattered, its surviving vessels limping back to Dominion space in disgrace. But Varkos knew the war was far from over. The Seltheri and their allies would not accept defeat. They would regroup, fortify, and return with even greater force. So he would not give them the chance. The Warborn dynasty did not believe in stalemates. They fought to win. Varkos issued a single command: the invasion begins. The Warborn fleets surged out of Sol like a spear of vengeance, striking deep into Seltheri-controlled space before their enemies could recover. Their strategy was ruthless: cut off the head, and the body dies. Their first target, Velketh Prime, the Seltheri aristocracy's throne world. For centuries, Velketh had been untouchable, protected by planetary shields and defended by elite forces. But the Seltheri had never faced an enemy like the Warborn. Varkos knew their weaknesses. He had fought their wars. He knew their defenses were built to withstand sieges, not surgical decapitation. The Warborn fleet did not engage in a drawn-out battle. Instead, they executed a lightning-fast planetary assault. Special forces infiltrated the defense grid, shutting down Velketh's shields in a single night. The moment the defenses fell, the Warborn descended like predators on wounded prey. Cities burned. Noble houses were torn apart. Seltheri warlords who had once ordered humanity to die on distant battlefields were now dragged from their palaces and executed in the streets. Varkos led the final push into the High Spire, the Seltheri ruler's command center. The Dominion's supreme chancellor, a creature who had never once set foot on a battlefield, cowered behind his honor guard. "You think this changes anything?" The alien snarled as Warborn soldiers stormed the throne room. "The Seltheri Dominion will not fall. You are nothing but a revolt, and revolts are crushed." Varkos responded by drawing his sidearm and putting a bullet between the chancellor's eyes. "Revolts die," he said, stepping over the alien's corpse. "Dynasties endure." Velketh Prime fell in a single week. The Dominion's ruling class was wiped out. The Seltheri military, leaderless and demoralized, fractured into splinter factions. Some fled, others fought on, but none could stop the Warborn. Word of Velketh's destruction spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, alien empires panicked. The X-Iraq hegemony, The Vortani coalition, even the insectoid Thar swarm, all of them realized too late that humanity was no longer just another species. The old order was dying. The Warborn didn't just want victory. They wanted dominion. And Varkos would stop at nothing to claim it. As the Warborn fleet prepared for the next stage of conquest, Varkos stood before his soldiers, his voice carrying across the ranks. The galaxy called us mercenaries, slaves, expendable. Now they call us something else. He raised his blade toward the burning ruins of Velkath Prime. They call us kings. The fall of Velkath Prime shattered the Selthari dominion, but Varkos knew the war was not yet won. Across the galaxy, the remnants of the old order, alien rulers, warlords, and once powerful empires were gathering for one final desperate stand. They called it the Concordance of Species, a last-ditch alliance of every civilization that had once used humanity as pawns. Selthari war fleets, Thyrak dreadnoughts, Vortani death cults, and even the Thar swarm, ancient enemies of the Dominion, set aside their differences for one purpose: to annihilate the Warborn dynasty before it could solidify its rule. Their combined fleets outnumbered the Warborn 5-1. Their weapons were the most advanced in the galaxy. Their armies were endless. And they were coming. Their destination: Iskalian Prime, a fortress world on the edge of Warborn-controlled space. The enemy planned to strike hard and fast, crush the Warborn in one decisive battle, and erase humanity's claim to the stars. But Varkos would not wait for death to come knocking. "Let them come," he growled as he studied the tactical displays. "We will break them here." The Battle of Iskalian Prime, the largest battle in human history, erupted in the void above Iskalian. The Concordance fleets descended in overwhelming force, unleashing planetary bombardments that shattered entire continents. The Warborn, outgunned and outnumbered, fought with terrifying precision, using ambush tactics and gravity well traps to tear through the enemy formations. But the real war was on the ground. Millions of Warborn soldiers, hardened from years of conquest, dug in across Iskalian's surface. They were not defending a planet. They were defending the future of humanity. Varkos fought alongside his warriors, leading charges through fire and blood. He cut down Xyrak warlords in personal duels, ripped through Selthari battle formations with brute force, and even brought down a Thar swarm queen with his own hands. But the enemy was relentless. For every ship the Warborn destroyed, 2 more arrived. For every alien general slain, another took their place. The Warborn lines began to falter. A desperate transmission reached Varkos' command center. "Supreme Commander, we can't hold much longer." Varkos clenched his fists. If they lost Iskalian, the dynasty would be broken. Then he made the choice that would cement his legend. "All fleets," he ordered, his voice ice-cold. "Prepare the Judgment Protocol." The Warborn's final gambit. The Judgment Protocol was not a retreat. It was annihilation. As the Warborn fleet engaged the Concordance one last time, hidden Warborn dreadnoughts activated ancient Selthari doomsday weapons, targeting the system's sun. The enemy realized too late what was happening. The Iskalian star collapsed into a burning singularity. The Concordance fleet, caught in its gravitational pull, was ripped apart. The last defenders of the old order screamed as their ships were swallowed into the abyss. The Warborn, prepared for this moment, activated emergency jump drives, vanishing into the void just before the system was consumed. The galaxy belongs to the Warborn. When the battle ended, there was no enemy fleet left to fight, no empire left to challenge the Warborn. The old galaxy had died in fire. And from its ashes, the Warborn dynasty stood alone. The war was over. The Concordance of Species had been shattered, its last great fleet swallowed by the burning singularity of Iskalian Prime. No alien empire remained strong enough to challenge the Warborn. The Selthari Dominion was a graveyard that Xyrak hegemony had fractured into warring factions, and the Vortani death cults had flowed into the void. For the first time in history, humanity was not a servant, not a soldier for hire, not a disposable asset. Humanity was the master. From the bridge of the Judgment's blade, Supreme Commander Elias Varkos gazed upon the galactic map, now littered with the ruins of the old order. What had once been human colonies under alien rule were now the beating heart of the Warborn dynasty. Cities once dominated by alien aristocrats now flew the crimson banners of the Warborn. But conquest was only the beginning. War made us kings, Varkos said to his assembled commanders. But war alone will not make us rulers. We do not seek an empire of ashes. We build something greater. The Warborn Reformation. Varkos did what no alien emperor before him had dared. He declared that humanity would not repeat the mistakes of the old order. The Warborn dynasty would not rule as tyrants. It would be an empire of soldiers, not politicians. A dominion where strength, discipline, and loyalty dictated rank, not birthright. Every human world was given a choice. Join the Warborn, fight for humanity's place in the stars, or be left behind in the ashes of the old era. The response was overwhelming. Former mercenary legions, abandoned colonies, and even independent human warlords swore allegiance. The Warborn legions were formed, not as an army of conquest, but as the shield and sword of humankind. The remnants of the alien races, broken and leaderless, were given a choice as well: serve under humanity's rule, or be exiled beyond the borders of the dynasty. Many resisted, but without their war fleets and rulers, they were powerless. Some swore loyalty, bending the knee to the new human empire. Others vanished into the unknown, vowing vengeance in whispers. The coronation of the Warborn king. 1 year after the fall of Iskalion Prime, in the reclaimed capital of New Velkath, the Warborn gathered in the thousands. Soldiers, commanders, and warriors stood in formation as Elias Varkos stepped forward. No alien aristocrats, no corporate overlords, no bureaucrats, only those who had fought, bled, and earned their place. As the banners of the Warborn dynasty rose across the capital, the warriors who had followed Varkos through fire and death knelt before him. We name you first sovereign of the Warborn, our king, our blade, our shield. Varkos looked across the gathered warriors, the soldiers who had carved this empire from nothing. We were slaves, he said. We were pawns in alien wars. We were used, discarded, and forgotten. He raised his sword to the stars. But now we are Warborn, and the galaxy will never forget us again. As the soldiers roared in unison, the Warborn dynasty's reign began.